The first ever Miami Grand Prix has been completed, and it was quite interesting. The end of the race was very interesting, and then even outside of the race, from Martin Brundle's grid walk with about every celebrity you could think of, from Brundle mistaking a college basketball player for Patrick Mahomes, from him just trying to find a race car driver, one of the F1 drivers. It took him a while, but he finally got to Lance Stroll. And then to the podium itself. They were wearing football helmets up there on the podium. They got a police escort to the podium, which was very interesting. I haven't seen that one before. This whole weekend was extremely interesting, and Miami went full out for trying to make this the most entertaining, complete event that F1 could possibly hold. They tried really hard. It's quite interesting. But at the end of the day, it was Max Verstappen getting himself his third win of the season, inching closer to Charles Leclerc in the championship standings. Of course, Leclerc has led since the first race of the season, but it has been reliability issues for Red Bull and Verstappen that have prevented Verstappen from being closer to the championship lead. He was running second in Australia and in Bahrain when he had problems and eventually did not finish those races. Whereas every race he's finished this year, he has won. But it was not as easy as it seemed. Verstappen had issues in practice on Friday. Barely got any laps in on Friday, in fact. And, it was looking like, it could be a tough qualifying session for Verstappen due to the lack of laps because of the brake issues. The rear brakes caught on fire. He was losing power or something. There were some hydraulics issues. So they were having a lot of problems with Verstappen's car on Friday. Tried their best to fix it up, but it was minimal laps leading up to qualifying. And then Verstappen put it third on the grid, so not the ideal position, but at least they're on the second row. At least they're on the clean side of the grid. And Verstappen took full advantage of the clean side of the grid as he was able to pass Carlos Sainz the first turn of the race. He was able to take second. And then he chased down Charles Leclerc. He took the lead at about lap 10, but Leclerc didn't let him get away easy. It wasn't like Verstappen took the lead, ran away by 5 seconds. Leclerc kept him honest for a few laps there. He kept within that DRS range, but after about 6 or 7 laps, Verstappen finally pulled out of that DRS range, pulled it to about a second and a half. And then Leclerc made a mistake. I think it was going into the final hairpin leading to the pit straight. And then Verstappen extended it past 3 seconds. And after that, nothing really happened. Up to lap 40, we'll get to that. Verstappen had extended his lead. The pit cycle had worked out perfectly for him. He had a 7-8 second lead over Leclerc. Leclerc was running faster laps, but it was nothing to do anything to the lead. If it was like a tenth, 2 tenths. I think one lap he had 4 tenths, but it took him from 8 seconds to 7.6. So, Verstappen could afford that with that big of a lead. But then on lap 40, the race got very interesting. Pierre Gasly had some contact with Fernando Alonso just a couple of laps prior, and, Gasly was slowing down significantly. He had lost positions. He was not running normal lap times. And then finally, in the first sector, near the end of the first sector, he was going around that kind of loop left-hander. I don't know what turn number it is. And he had gone wide, said he had lost the steering. And all of a sudden, here comes Lando Norris to pass him, and Pierre Gasly just kind of doesn't see him. He completely wipes out Lando Norris. Lando Norris's rear tire just goes flying off the car. Gasly ends up not finishing the race. He gets back to the pits, but Norris's car is stranded in the middle of the racetrack. So at first they call a virtual safety car. I'm like, all right, let's throw a safety car in here to make it more fun. I think everyone was thinking that. And then a safety car came out, and it was a well-deserved safety car. I'm not saying it was bogus BS because, the car was in the middle of the track. There was debris scattered everywhere. A virtual safety car would not have done anything there. They needed a full safety car, but what this did is it bunched up the field, and it allowed some guys to get pit stops. Sergio Perez was able to go get some fresh medium tires. George Russell was able to go get some fresh tires after he had decided, let's run out on the hard tires. They'd been on the hard tires for the first 40 laps of the race. They said, okay, let's stay out until a safety car or a virtual safety car comes out, and that is exactly what happened. Russell took full advantage of it, got himself some fresh tires. Some other guys got fresh tires, but Perez and Russell being the two farthest up the field to take advantage of that. And then also it had bunched up, the top cars. So Leclerc was now back on Verstappen's tail. He was back up close and he kept Verstappen honest. He was actually able to make a couple attempts to pass Verstappen at turn 11. He got that DRS, was able to try to make a lunge to the inside, but just could not quite get there. And in the last 3 or 4 laps, Verstappen had pulled out of that DRS range and pulled ahead by 3 and almost 4 seconds at the end there. So Leclerc tried his hardest. He really tried, but eventually had to settle for second. But the first 40 laps were pretty meh, pretty uneventful. But the last 17 were actually pretty exciting from, the Norris Gasly wreck. You don't want to see people wreck like that. It's such a stupid wreck. But other than that, it was really fun to see how Verstappen and Leclerc battled for the lead, the intensity of that. If Verstappen makes a mistake, then Leclerc is in prime position to win. If Leclerc can make an aggressive move to the inside of Verstappen, then he could potentially run away with it or try to hold off Verstappen. And then the battle for third. Sainz was able to hold off Perez, and Perez was on the fresher mediums. Sure, Sainz had finally gotten those hard tires up to temperature, up to speed, But, with the fresher mediums, you'd think that Perez would be able to get around Sainz, but he never was, and that was kind of fun to watch as well. There was a fun battle between the two Mercedes of Russell and Hamilton with Valtteri Bottas, and Bottas went wide and just clipped the wall a little bit, and that allowed both the Mercedes to get by Bottas. Mick Schumacher, he was in the points. Late in this race, he was P9, and him and Vettel made contact, and I thought today was going to be the day. I thought Mick was going to get his points today. He was looking so good, so strong, but I only saw one replay of it, and it was a little bit, it was difficult to see. I only saw one onboard, and it was of Mick. Mick was on the inside. Vettel was on the outside. Vettel looked like he was going for the apex. Mick could have backed off, if we're being honest, but at the same time, I think Vettel could have left him a little bit more space. I may have to see a different replay. I may have to. You can yell at me right now. You really can. But either way, Mick, so close to those first points. And, I thought he was going to get them. I really did. So unfortunate. George Russell kept his top 5 streak alive. While we're talking about, let's just look at the results here. Max Verstappen, he gets another win. In fact, I think I saw somewhere that he tied his girlfriend's dad. Not technically his father-in-law, but, in a sense. Kelly Piquet's dad is Nelson Piquet, if you're not picking up on that. Max Verstappen is dating Kelly Piquet. Okay, you guys get it. Anyways, Max Verstappen, his 24th career win, his 3rd win of the season. He wins the first ever Miami Grand Prix. Lots of hype, lots of excitement leading up to this race. And Verstappen wins his 2nd ever win in the United States, of course, last fall at COTA. He was able to win the United States Grand Prix. He was there for that. Very fun race, by the way. But yes, he was able to win today, hold off his championship rival, which is Charles Leclerc. Leclerc finishes 2nd. Another podium for Leclerc. He's gotten a podium at every race except for Imola. Of course, he was battling for 2nd late in that one before he spun. Finished 6th in that race, but a 2nd place finish. Pretty solid day for him. He got the pole yesterday. He looked like he was in prime position to have a really good result, to get on the podium at worst. And Verstappen, Red Bull, they just looked better, and Leclerc was pretty much able to maximize his day after Verstappen got around him. Sainz, after a struggle of the last couple of weeks with a DNF at Australia and Imola, he had a crash in practice on Friday, but he was able to qualify at 2nd, ends up finishing on the podium again, so a good recovery considering how this weekend started with a front row start, a podium finish. Sainz, as I said, a very, very tough weekend for him to start off, but he ends up capping it off in good fashion, a double podium for Ferrari. So yeah, I'm sure Sainz is happy with that result considering how the last couple of weeks have gone, showing his true potential. I'm telling you, I really like Sainz. I think he's really good, but the last couple of weeks he's just made too many mistakes. But today he looked really good in a great defense of Sergio Perez. Perez had those fresher tires. I thought Perez was going to get around him, but Sainz did a great job of holding him off, not letting him make it too aggressive of a move. There was one time Perez sent it deep on the inside, but locked up. Sainz was able to be patient, get back around him, and hold him off. So very, very good job by Sainz, especially at the end there. 4th place, Sergio Perez, as I said, had a really good shot at the podium, had those fresher tires, just could not get around Carlos Sainz. I think Red Bull does inch up. It's like 3 or 4 points in the constructor standings, but the constructors, despite the DNFs from Red Bull, the Constructors is closer than you expect with that Red Bull 1-2 last week and the Ferraris having their struggles at Imola. I think it's like a 7 or 8 point gap in the Constructors. 5th place, George Russell. Mercedes had an up and down weekend. In practice, they looked like they were going to be competing for the pole. They were looking insane. Russell was fastest in one of the practice sessions. Then qualifying came, and it was back to midfield Mercedes. I mean, Russell qualified 11th or 12th. Hamilton qualified 6th, so, he was looking better. He was looking a little bit more comfortable, but they still were well off the pace of Ferrari and Red Bull. And then today, they looked pretty good. They were the best of the rest. I mean, they truly were. Hamilton was in 5th, 6th most of the day behind Bottas or, in front of his teammate there at the end. And then Russell ended up getting by Hamilton late in this race, 3 or 4 laps to go. And then Hamilton finishes 6th. So as I said, a good chunk of points for Mercedes today to kind of extend that gap to keep them in 3rd. I think it's like a 50-point gap to 4th in the Constructors. So they're in that awkward middle ground of they're not quite fighting for the Constructors title, the top 2, but they're also like not barely holding off 4th. They're like in a very no man's land 3rd place in the Constructors. 7th place, Valtteri Bottas gets himself some more points for Alfa Romeo. He's looked so good this year. He just seems rejuvenated. I mean, truly, I think I've said this every single race recap this year. I still think he's gotten too much hate during his Mercedes days. He was going up against arguably the greatest of all time, Lewis Hamilton. Everyone's like, oh, Bottas sucks. He can't beat Hamilton. I'm like, that's like you're trying to beat the greatest of all time every single week. That's a little bit difficult. Just saying. Anyways, my point being, another great performance by him. He was ahead of the Mercedes most of the day. I qualified both of them, but a late mistake puts him behind him. He ends up finishing 7th, so a good day for him. 8th place, Ocon, who started last on the grid. He better have gotten driver of the day. That's impressive. Even if it was a strategy call, Ocon crashed in the final practice session right before qualifying. Had to go to a different car, I think they said. They had to change a lot. Anyways, Ocon ends up getting 8th. That's a pretty solid day considering he started dead last on the day. I know that the 2 Aston Martins had fueling issues and they had to start on the pit lane, but a very good day from Ocon. Very impressed. 9th place is his teammate, Fernando Alonso. He made some contact with Gasly. He made some contact with Hamilton. Alonso he had an interesting day. A pretty exciting day. Contact with Hamilton on lap 1 and then contact with Gasly late in this one, but he ends up getting 9th. Double points day for Ocon. Solid day for him. 10th place, Albon, again getting a point for the Williams. How about that? I mean, seriously. Williams has looked like the worst car in the grid this year. There's no other way to put it. But Albon has somehow pulled out of that car 2 points so far. I'll tell you what. I didn't have the highest hopes for Albon. I thought he could beat Latifi, but that's not saying too much. But, I didn't think he'd do too much. He's done much better than I expected. So, good job, Alex Albon. 11th place, Daniel Ricciardo. I think he got a time penalty at the end for, cutting a corner. So, I think he was, 13th. That update will come later. I'm sure it will. Check my community post. 12th, Stroll. 13th, Yuki Tsunoda. 14th, Nicholas Latifi. His best result of the year, I believe. 15th, Mick Schumacher. I thought it was happening today, guys. I really did. He was there. He had the points. Sure, he could have let Vettel go. Sure, he could have not sent it up the inside. But at the same time, I think Vettel could have left him more room. We'll see what they say after the race. DNFs, Magnussen and Stroll got into it late in this one. They made some contact. And Magnussen had too much damage. He didn't finish the race. He finished the 16th. Vettel, 17th after his contact with Schumacher. I mean, Vettel literally got airborne. He was like this. 18th, Gasly. That's tough for him. He was up in the points. He was looking to have a good day. Norris, 19th. He had a bad pit stop, and he was trapped behind some people for a bit. And then 20th, just a bad weekend overall for Zhou Guanyu. He was actually looking like he was going to make it out of Q1, but he got stuck in traffic at the very end of the lap. He was actually having a really good lap, and then he got stuck in traffic, so he didn't make it out of Q1. And then early in this race, I think he made a pretty good start, gained a couple of positions. And then he had a mechanical failure, and he barely made it 6 laps. So I kind of felt bad for him. I thought he was going to have a good race. I was looking forward to seeing how he was going to do, because he's honestly not had a terrible start to the season. So, you know, he scored points in his first race. So I was looking forward to seeing how he would progress through this race. But unfortunately, he didn't finish. So, darn it. But yeah, first 40 laps, not much to say on it. Verstappen passing Leclerc for the lead was about the most exciting thing. Other than that, there were a couple fun battles, but it seemed like a lot of DRS trains with both the Haas's and Aston Martin, a Williams. Vettel made a mistake somewhere in there, and he got passed by Norris and a couple other guys. That was kind of exciting. Other than that, nothing too memorable there. And then the end of the race, you know, it was fun to see the battle for the win there, get intense after the safety car. Battle for the final podium spot, the battle between the Alpha and the 2 Mercedes. Other than that, yeah, nothing too crazy. But, yeah, anyways, I got to go watch a NASCAR race. I've already missed enough of it. But overall, this race was like a entertainment factor. Brundle's grid walk gets a 15 out of 10. That was the most awkward, chaotic, weird, uncomfortable thing I've ever watched. But I also thoroughly enjoyed it because, like, Brundle just wanted to talk to one person within F1, like all these celebrities around him and all these random people. He misidentified Patrick Mahomes, which was hilarious. And then he finally got to Lance Stroll, Christian Horner. I was like, oh, he found some F1 people. I bet he's so happy. But yeah, he was trending on the Twitter. He was the number 2 trend. Poor Martin Brundle. I love him, though. And then, yeah, the race itself. I kind of got lost to whatever we were talking about. But the race itself was like a 6.5 out of 10. Brundle's grid walk bumps it to a 7.5 out of 10 on the weekend. But thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. I'll be doing my NASCAR race recap here in a bit. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We talk about F1. We talk about NASCAR here a lot. But yeah, have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your evening. Have a great rest of your night. I don't know where in the world you are, but have a great rest of your day, night, or evening.